here is a tricky catch-22 for Muslims. If Jesus wasn't crucified, then either he was wrong about predicting his death, which would undermine his role as a prophet in Islam, or he actually was crucified, which would contradict the Quran's account. Think about it. If Jesus didn't die on the cross, it makes him a false prophet, meaning Islam is false since they regard Jesus as a prophet. But if he did die, it goes against the Quran, which also means that Islam is false. There is no easy way around this dilemma for Muslims. I think most Muslims would argue that Jesus didn't actually predict his own death as the Gospels claim, and these are just supposed Bible corruptions. But let's dive into some of the evidence that shows that he really did make these predictions.
Was Jesus really as we have come to know him? The letter that Pilate wrote to Roman Emperor Tiberius, Jesus of Nazareth seemed to be more sympathetic to the Romans than to the Jews themselves. Even though I had the power to arrest him or send him into exile in Pontus, doing so would have been unjust, and justice is a fundamental principle of Roman governance. Jesus was not an agitator nor a rebel. I offered him my protection, perhaps without him even realizing it. Jesus had the freedom to act, speak, gather with the people, choose his followers, and teach without any interference from me. If someday, may the gods forbid, the religion of our ancestors is replaced by that of Jesus, it will be this tolerance that may lead to the fall of Rome, and I, as an unfortunate instrument, will have been part of what the Jews call providence and we call fate. You know, being of Spanish and Roman origin, I am not easily intimidated or moved. However, when Jesus arrived, I was standing on the balcony, and I felt as if my feet were glued to the marble floor. My whole body trembled like someone with a guilty conscience, while the Nazarene remained calm, with a serenity that seemed like purity itself. As he approached, he stopped and with a gentle gesture seemed to say, "I am here," without needing to speak a word for a long time. I was both amazed and impressed by this man, a type that our artists have never imagined when depicting gods and heroes. There was nothing about him that repelled me, yet I felt weak and too old to come any closer. "Jesus," I finally said, my voice trembling. "Jesus of Nazareth, for the past 3 years, I have given you total freedom of expression, and I do not regret it. Your words are sensible and full of wisdom. I don't know if you've read Socrates or Plato, but I recognize that the simplicity and greatness of your speech place you far above these philosophers. The Emperor is aware of this, and as his representative here, I am pleased to have granted you the freedom you so rightly deserve. However, I must warn you that your words have attracted powerful and misguided enemies. Socrates too had enemies and became their victim. Yours, even more furious, have turned against you for the harshness of your words, and against me for allowing you to speak freely. Some even accuse me of conspiring with you to weaken the little civil power that Rome still allows the Hebrews. My recommendation, and not an order, is that you be more careful and moderate in your speech from now on, considering that your enemies may use pride to incite the ignorant people against you and force me to act according to the law." Jesus responded calmly, "Ruler of the earth, your words do not come from true wisdom. Ask Mount Tabor to stop in the middle of the valley. It will answer that it follows the laws of nature and of the Creator God. Only He knows where the waters flow. I tell you the truth, before the rose of Sharon blooms, the blood of the righteous will be shed." "Your blood will not be shed," I replied, deeply moved. "I value your wisdom more than all these rebellious Pharisees who abuse the freedom the Romans have granted them. They conspire against Caesar and defame him, making the people believe he is a tyrant who seeks their destruction. These ungrateful men do not realize that sometimes the wolf disguises itself as a sheep to achieve its wicked aims. I will protect you from them. My praetorium will be a sacred refuge for you, both day and night." Jesus, calm as ever, shook his head and with a serene smile said, "When the time comes, there will be no refuge for the Son of Man, neither on the earth nor beneath it. The true refuge is in the heavens." Pointing upward, "What was written by the prophets will be fulfilled, young man."
Another example is when Jesus predicted his death and resurrection in Mark 8:31-33, saying he would be killed and rise after 3 days. Peter, not understanding, rebuked Jesus, but Jesus firmly corrected him, saying, "Get behind me, Satan." This sharp rebuke would be embarrassing and therefore an unlikely detail for the early Christians to invent, especially given Peter's prominence, suggesting that this was based in real events. The numerous predictions and detailed accounts of Jesus' impending death and resurrection are just too compelling to be dismissed as mere inventions. Therefore, there's no escaping this dilemma. Either Jesus didn't die by crucifixion, which would invalidate his prophecy and make him a false prophet, making Islam false, or he did die by crucifixion, directly contradicting the Quran and making Islam false. Either way, Islam is false.
A Gallic seer, who claimed to foresee the future, fell at my feet in tears and warned me, "Beware, do not touch this man, for he is sacred." Last night I saw him in a vision walking on water, flying on the wings of the wind. He spoke to the storm and to the fish in the lake, and they all obeyed him. I saw the river on Mount Catherine fill with blood, the statues of Caesar weep, and the morning sun appeared like a morning virgin. Black clouds gathered over the temple and spread across the city, covering it like a dark shroud, with visible signs both in the heavens and on the earth. It is said that Dionysius, the patriarch, exclaimed, "Either the Creator is suffering, or the universe is falling apart." As these frightening phenomena unfolded, a violent earthquake shook Lower Egypt, filling everyone with terror and nearly scaring the superstitious Jews to death.
For Peter, James, and John, the three disciples present, the Transfiguration was a transformative experience.
The images on the shroud were said to contain marks that were eerily reminiscent of the wounds endured during the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. There were thorn marks on the head, as though a crown of thorns had been painfully pressed upon it. Lacerations on the back seemed to speak of a brutal flogging, while bruises on the shoulders hinted at the weight of a heavy burden carried. The most poignant of all were the stains, believed to be blood, scattered across the shroud. Experts noted that the sepia-tone images on the shroud bore an uncanny resemblance to photographic negatives rather than positive images. Yet despite the employment of the most advanced scientific technology today, no one has managed to replicate the mysterious image it bears. Researcher named John Jackson concluded that vacuum UV radiation remains the sole plausible explanation for the formation of the image. To transform linen into a perfectly photographically sensitive material, light radiation is required, but it must be devoid of any accompanying heat radiation. To produce the image on the shroud, an astounding amount of approximately several billion watts of light radiation would be required, surpassing anything known from UV radiation sources today. If the accompanying heat energy were present, the cloth would have vaporized in an unimaginably brief span, less than 1/40 of a second. Such a process would demand a magnitude of power greater than the total electrical energy generated by our entire planet combined. It becomes evident that only a miracle from the Almighty God could account for such a phenomenon.
Matthew 17 verses 1 through 8. And after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John his brother, and bringeth them up into the high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them. And his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them Moses and Elias talking with him.
Scientists theorize it was an intense burst of light, like atomic power, something unprecedented, something extraordinary. This is the truth hidden in plain sight. The science is already settled, yet the debate rages on. Why? Because the implications are monumental. You see, science operates through what we call peer review, a rigorous process of verification. And when we strip away the noise, the opinions, and the skepticism, what are we left with? Over 120 scientific papers analyzing the shroud. Of those, only 6 or 7 reject its authenticity. And those 6 or 7? Their conclusions have been shown to contain errors. They've been debunked. What remains is undeniable, irrefutable evidence. This object takes us to Turin, Italy, where it rests in a bulletproof silver box, protected as though we already know it's authentic. This is the Shroud of Turin, a long linen burial cloth believed to have wrapped the body of Jesus of Nazareth. Every discipline of science and history has studied this cloth, and what we've discovered places it in the right time and the right place to be him. But what about the image itself? Peer-reviewed science has ruled out every possibility. It isn't paint, powder, liquid, burning, scorching, sunlight, or any other artistic method. The image is so superficial it defies explanation. It's beyond human capability to create. The imprint is thinner than the width of a human hair. There is no paint soaking into the fibers, no brush strokes. It's as though the image was seared onto the very surface of the linen by a force we cannot replicate.